Hello and welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome to today's program Shashank Rao, who's Associate Professor at Auburn University. And today we're going to talk about TMS in the classroom, preparing the next generation of logistics professionals. Now, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I've done a lot of writing and talking over the past few years about, talent development and the need to some of the things that we need to do to prepare the next generation of supply chain logistics professionals out in the industry. And certainly one of those areas that I hear a lot from both educators as well as employers is the need to really strengthen the skills that students have in the technology world, particularly because technology is playing such a greater role in supply chain logistics. And Auburn University is doing some great things in this area, and we've got Shashank Rao here to really share kind of their experience to date on bringing in TMS into the classroom and what value that's bringing to their program, to their students, and obviously the employers that recruit from Auburn. So look forward to having a great conversation with Shashank here. Just a reminder that if you're joining us live, part of our conversation here at Talking Logistics is to make this interactive. So if you do have a question for Shashank as we're having our conversation here, you can post a question via the question button. And I'll keep an eye on it, and certainly if we've got time and it's a good and appropriate question, I'll weave it into the conversation. You will have to, if you are joining us as a visitor, you will have to sign in first before you're able to ask a question. So with that, Shashank, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks, Adrian. Very glad to be here.
So, Shashank, whenever I have, someone new on the program, I always like to kind of find out a little bit about their background, how they got involved in this industry, so on and so forth. So why don't we start there? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your career path and what your current role and responsibilities are there at Auburn University?
Yeah, like a lot of other professionals in our industry, I've kind of taken a slightly convoluted path to get here. I started off my career. I'm originally an engineer, so I started off in civil and environmental engineering. Started out building effluent treatment plants and some of that kind of stuff, and eventually that led to my getting involved with roadway construction. That was my introduction to the field of transportation and logistics. And one thing led to another. After doing that for a while, when I went back to grad school, the last thing that I thought of was I was going to get back into this field. So I did my MBA in finance, and next thing I know, I got a job in the banking industry, and I was doing trade finance. So I started working with import-export, and I was back in the thick of things as far as supply chain was concerned, and did that for a while. My last job in that sector was with Citigroup, and after which I decided, I'd like to try out a stint in academia. So I found myself entering the PhD program at the University of Kentucky. Graduated in 2009 with a PhD in decision science, and I worked in Fort Lauderdale for a while, for about a couple of years. Before moving up back to Auburn, and that's kind of how I found my way here. I'm currently the Thompson Associate Professor at Auburn University. I handle their tools and technologies modules in the supply chain program. What that means is I cover courses related to supply chain technology in the undergraduate program, supply chain modeling in the MBA program, and off and on I'll do the intro to logistics as well. That's kind of how I've gotten here, I suppose.
Great background, Shashank. I started my career in engineering as well. So it never ceases to surprise me how many engineers ultimately end up in the supply chain logistics field. And obviously you've had some diverse background and experience there leading up to your current role there at Auburn. Just to improve the audio, Shashank. So if you could just hold the microphone a little bit closer to your mouth as you respond, I think that will help out. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Auburn program? For folks who may not be familiar with, Auburn supply chain program, tell us a little bit about it. How many students are enrolled? Is enrollment growing? What kind of courses are offered? So on and so forth.
Awesome. So we are located just about 100 miles south of Atlanta, on I-85, and we are the I'd say we're probably the second strongest program at Auburn University after our football program. They're probably a little more famous than us, but I'd say we're close. We currently have about 350 students in the program. We've been growing pretty fast, pretty rapidly, and we are at the moment the fastest growing program in the College of Business. We graduate in the region of about 125 to about 130 students a year. Uh, and typically, and something that sets us apart from a lot of our competitors is the fact that we are, as far as I know, one of the only logistics and supply chain programs out there that requires an internship of every graduating student. So every one of our students that graduates with a supply chain uh, with a supply chain undergraduate diploma from Auburn is required to have had at least some kind of a real life internship before they get their diploma. So I think that's something that sets us apart. We've we offer, our program it's a combination of certain core courses and certain electives. So typically we have core courses dealing with the traditional transportation, logistics, supply chain management, and procurement. And after that, we allow students to choose an area of focus within the program itself. For example, some of them might choose to focus on tools and technologies, in which case they can take a course in ERP and in general supply chain technologies, both of which would be the courses that I would typically offer in the program. Or there may be other students that may go an analytical route, and they can they can take courses in analytics. But yeah, so we have a fair amount of electives and supply chain program.
Yeah, great. So, I got to ask, since you brought up the football program, are there any football students that are in the supply chain track there at Auburn?
We've had a few. We've had a few off and on, and let me think. Yeah, I think I have one of them in my tools and tech class for certain. But yeah, we get a few of them every now and then.
No, that's great. That's great. Obviously, you always have to be thinking about, a career after football, for those that, particularly those that don't make it into the NFL, and certainly those that are focusing on supply chain logistics. It's a smart move. And I think the internship requirement is a smart one, because I think, more and more employers that I talk to, they greatly value, students, that already have, kind of that real world, experience under their belt, and as well as the technology experience, which we're going to talk about here today as well. Kind of take it a kind of a little bit of higher level view. Over the years, there's been a lot of buzz, about there being talent shortage in the supply chain logistics industry. From your perspective, is the talent shortage due to, not enough students pursuing degrees in supply chain logistics? And obviously, it sounds like Auburn's has a growing, a program, so maybe that's not the case from your perspective. But is it a case of not many students pursuing a degree, or is it a case of, a gap between kind of what employers are looking for and what universities and other educational outlets have been providing, or is it a combination of both? What's your thought on that?
That's actually a very good question, Adrian. We some of my colleagues at Auburn actually did some research on that very same question with CSCMP, and one of the key findings was that the largest talent gap in industry is basically at not so much at the entry level as it is at the mid management level. So people typically, 4, 5, 6 years into their career, and if you think about it, that kind of there's a good reason for that. Uh, what most logistics and supply chain programs are actually pretty new. It's as a formal university level program of study. Most of these, with a few exceptions, are 6, 7, 8 years old, maybe 10 years old at most. So what's really happening is, if you go back 10 or 15 years, there were only a handful of programs that graduated or offered programs, specialized programs in supply chain management. What's ended up happening is a lot of people at that middle level, like myself, for example, found their way into the logistics and supply chain field by accident. You kind of I was talking to a gentleman the other day who was about, been working for about 7 or 8 years in the transportation field, and he was in international logistics. And he told me that the only reason he got pulled into that role in his company was because he spoke 3 languages. So, and that was the only skill set that he had that was of any use in what he was doing. So, kind of a lot of people found their way in by accident more than anything else earlier, because of the lack of, I guess, lack of program offerings, which is really kind of showing up in terms of what employers see as the talent gap. Based on what research we've done, there's the biggest gap is at that middle level compared to rather the entry level, or on the other, the higher end.
Yeah, no, good point. I think that we were kind of joking earlier in terms of how many folks from engineering and other disciplines kind of ultimately enter supply chain logistics field, and particularly those in kind of our age group, if you will, because there weren't supply chain programs, at least not that many back when we were undergrads. So I think that the research results that you referenced kind of make sense. So kind of related to that question, I mean, what are you hearing from recruiters, in terms of the skills, knowledge, and qualities that they're looking for from undergraduates?
That's again a good question. I think in with the business environment being what it is, I think most recruiters are looking for students that have the ability to add direct and immediate value to companies now, or to their company. Now, what does that mean, and how does that I mean, how would somebody add that direct value? If you think about it, the one theme that emerges very often is the ability to creatively problem solve, the ability to not need hand holding, or not be to be able to solve problems without being told what needs to be done. I think that's a very important skill set that most recruiters are looking for. Also, just a detailed understanding of the core functional areas within supply chain, understanding how procurement works, understanding how uh, outbound transportation works, understanding what makes international logistics different from domestic logistics. All of these kind of things, basic strong foundations in logistics, transportation, procurement, basically kind of strong foundations in how supply chains work. And I think one big theme that's emerging these days is a very strong analytical skill set. I think employers are looking for students that are able to make sense of all the data, because there's just so much data available. But the ability to make sense of that is, I think, a very, very key skill set. And that goes hand in hand with being able to use technology effectively, make those decisions. So I think kind of, if you want to sum it up, there's these 3 or 4 things I'd say, all of which tie into the ability to be a creative problem solver. A, a strong analytical skill set, B, an ability to use technology, C, a strong understanding of some key functional areas in supply chain management. All of these eventually lead to the ability to creatively solve problems. I think that's really what employers are looking for.
Yeah, I think you summed it up very nicely there. I mean, I hear the same thing from employers, and I always make the point that supply chain management is really about problem solving, right? Every day is a different day in this industry, right? So I was at the Food Shippers conference a few weeks back, and they awarded a scholarship to a young professional who was just going to be entering the field. And in her acceptance speech, she said, the reason I chose supply chain management is because I know I'm not going to live the same day twice, at work. Just because and I thought that was such a great comment, right? Because it's so true. I mean, every day is different. And to the points that you brought up, the ability to have those great analytical skills to understand what's going on, the technology to, just because, it is such complexity involved that you really need to leverage technology to, be able to do the type of analysis that's required in the time frame that's required. And then obviously having that, being able to connect the dots across, the end-to-end supply chain. I think those are all great things. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. So let's talk about technology now, and kind of its use in the classroom. Auburn is, participant in MercuryGate's MercuryGate University program, which provides, students and educators with, free access to its, TMS, its transportation management system. So I guess the first obvious question is, why did you join this program?
That's a very good question, Adrian. So when I came in to when I got to Auburn about 4 years back, we talked to employers. We usually do that at our career fair and through several other events to try to understand what exactly it is that employers wanted. And some of the themes that I brought up came up again and again. One of which was the ability to or the ability of students to effectively and efficiently use uh, technological tools or uh, just technology in general to be able to make decisions. So we started looking at, and so we asked ourselves what kind of technologies would students be interest or would be of most interest to employers, and obviously other than the usual, spreadsheet modeling and database, Excel access kind of tools, which we decided to offer in any case. Uh, some terms that came up again and again were ERP, enterprise resource planning, reporting tools, and also and TMS. So TMS, as you know, is one of the fastest growing software suites in the or software applications in the transportation logistics field, and a lot of employers were talking about how they were interested in talking to candidates that had an experience or at least an understanding of how TMS works. Uh, so that's kind of where the need came from. Then the issue was of trying to find out how we could incorporate TMS within an academic setting, and it worked perfectly because MercuryGate was just about launching the MercuryGate University Alliance at that point. So we were actually one of the universities that went on board and said, hey, we'll try this out, and we'll test drive you and see how it works out, and it worked beautifully because they gave us access to their entire TMS solution, which we brought into our classroom, which effectively ended up filling that need of the students and the employers. And the fact that we could have probably found other vendors that could have helped us as well, but the kind of assistance that MercuryGate offers, the train the trainer sessions, and the uh, just troubleshooting and with setting up or with getting around any problems that may arise in the classroom, or uh, the kind of support that the MercuryGate University Alliance offers with how much time they were willing to spend with us to make it successful. Really kind of it was just a meeting of several things. There was a need from our side, there was the availability from MercuryGate side, and it was just a great fit with our program as it stood at that point. So it just kind of worked.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think, these types of programs are something I'm beginning to see, more and more of. And, I think the close partnership between, universities and technology companies, and not only providing the technology to your point, but being able to work together to, actually then take the next step, which is, how do you actually use this and how do you develop a curriculum, right, that leverages, this technology and really, at the end of the day, you really have to form a partnership, to really, come up with a successful game plan, if you will, and to execute it. So let's talk about the execution side. I mean, how exactly are you using the TMS in the classroom? Can you give an example of how students are using it as part of the curriculum?
Yeah. So what we've done is we have incorporated TMS into our larger technologies class. So what that means is, so that class, it's a 16-week class which has several different tools that we introduce our students to. To start with, we spend about 4 weeks on just basic spreadsheet modeling. So we start off with, kind of, because that's another thing that employers were looking for, the ability to use uh, Excel solver, or the ability to use uh, pivot tables, and basic stuff in Excel. It's incredible how many students can go through an entire college experience without being exposed to simple things like that. So we started that course out with, or we start that course out with just those basic tools. Eventually moving it into more complex and focused transportation and supply chain technologies. So the second module in that is another 4-week module on routing and scheduling. TMS is the third out of 4 modules in that course. So they get about a 4 to 6 week hands-on training with the TMS tool itself. Right from, if you look at all the 3 functions of TMS, there's routing, rating, and reporting. Right. So they get to work 2 weeks on the routing part. They get to work 2 to 3 weeks on the rating part, and finally on the reporting part. So, and it's a very hands-on experience. It's very applied. What I like to tell them is, if you watch that show, The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon and Leonard, they're always arguing about, hey, what is superior? Is it theoretical physics or is it experimental physics? In our field, there is no theoretical supply chain management. It's all applied. It's all experimental, and that's how we run that class. So it's very hands-on. They get to play with the tool. And I tell them all on day one, you cannot break this thing. There's nothing you can do to break it. If you think you've done something funky, we'll reset it for you. So we take them through a series of exercises, right from setting up an LTL contract to setting up a reporting schedule in the TMS, etc., all of that stuff. Uh, and finally, the last module in that course is the ERP module, where so they kind of get a little bit of flavor of several different technologies that they would see in the real world.
No, that's great. I mean, I think it's funny how, the use of Excel. I've often joked that Excel is arguably the most widely used enterprise software application out there. For a variety of different reasons, and certainly it is a skill that students and all of us continue to need to have, because it does have its role and its place within the work environment. But certainly the use of enterprise applications like a TMS is the preferred tool if you're doing things like routing, or if you're doing things like rating and things like that. So it sounds like like you said, really practical hands-on experience over the course of those weeks, really kind of leveraging the key components of the TMS and what the capabilities are. So what's been the reaction, from students? I mean, does it make the learning more fun and interesting for them? I mean, what kind of What kind of feedback do you get from them?
Absolutely, absolutely. When we started this thing out about 4 years back, when I just got here, we were kind of experimenting with different formats, and we started out with a format where the first half, the first 6 to 8 weeks of the course would be theory, and then we'd get into usage and applications, and that went okay. But really, the feedback that we were getting from students was they really wanted more face time. They wanted more hands-on time so they could actually learn the tool a lot better. So we away from the the theory, keeping the theory and the lab separate to to running the entire class in the lab as in a hands-on format. It's gone down really really well. Students seem to really like it. I mean, and the proof is in the numbers. I mean, we started out when I first offered this class 4 years back at Auburn. We had about 25 students signed up. It's an elective course, so we had about 25 students signed up. This semester, I'm I'm having 90 students, 90. That's a growth rate of like 350% in 3.5 years, and it's stuck at 90 only because of the capacity. We have classrooms that can take any or any higher number, and we don't have on the ground cover and should it be offered. So that tells you that obviously it's going down well, and it's a very very popular lecture.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think to have a 4x, almost a 4x jump over just 3 years into the enrollment. I mean, students talk to each other, right? So if it was not an informative class, if it's not a fun class, they would tell each other, avoid this class, right? And obviously, it seems like the opposite is happening. They're saying, this is the class that you should be taking. So that's great to hear. So what about from the employer side? I mean, what are you hearing from employers? I mean, going back to your earlier point, I assume that this is something that they value in the students coming out of the program, having that kind of experience.
Yeah, this is like I'd mentioned, this entire course came out of industry interaction and talking to employers about what they wanted. So we were not surprised when it went down as well as it did with the employers. I mean, they love it. Any employer that has a MercuryGate solution already implemented, obviously for them it's a no-brainer. I mean, they know exactly where they get their talent from or where to get their talent from. Employers that may not be with MercuryGate but with other TMS providers, even they see a lot of value in it, because at the end of the day, you're getting this person that at least understands exactly what a TMS is, exactly what it works, exactly what an ERP system is, exactly how it works, and they've used it. So really what happens is it goes back to that point of adding direct, immediate, and measurable value. I mean, you can bring somebody in and the onboarding time is cut down substantially. So really that's a saving off the bat for employers. So employers seem to love that. We've received very positive feedback. If you just look at our the number of employers coming to our career fair, that's a sign of that the that's a sign of employer interest, right? We've gone from about 20 something, I don't have the exact numbers, but 20 something about 3 years back to about 40 some employers at each career event every semester. Uh, Currently, so that tells you that obviously there's something that the employers like in the program, right?
Yeah, no, that absolutely, and I think again you see it there. I mean, it sounds like with the growing number of employers coming to your recruiting fairs, I think that is a good proof point there in terms of the value that they see in the students coming out of the program. So kind of just got a couple of more questions here in the time that we have. So looking ahead now, I mean, what's next for Auburn in terms of using technology in the classroom as part of your supply chain curriculum?
There's a few things we've been considering. One of which is we're going to be looking at possibly currently the technologies module or the technologies course is offered purely as an elective. We have been considering of making it a required course because the employers are talking about, but that there's some logistical issues involved with that, including as I alluded to earlier. I mean, we don't know if we at the moment have the resources in terms of hardware and in terms of manpower to be able to take on the increased student load that will come in with the course being converted to a required course. But it is something we're considering. Another thing that we have uh, already done, in fact, as of this semester, is we've gone ahead and introduced a requirement to have some exposure to analytical tools in our program. So what that means is every one of our students actually is required to take two courses in business analytics, where they learn several different tools again, like SAS Enterprise Miner. They learn programming in R. Some of these things, that really help them again with the idea of adding direct, immediate, and measurable value. There's all these things that we're looking at. Another possibility that we've been considering is doing the TMS and ERP, or maybe just the ERP into a standalone course by itself. ERP is ERP or TMS. It's such a vast universe that you can easily cover a 16-week course in just one of these tools, depending on how much depth. So these are all things we are considering, and we want to implement these as and when we have.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, I think you can definitely dedicate a whole semester on TMS because I mean, there's so much involved with transportation management when you're thinking about inbound versus outbound, when you're thinking about international versus domestic, when you're thinking about the different modes, LTL, parcel, truckload, routing and scheduling, private fleet, so on and so forth. There's such a diversity of potential, topics that you can easily, I can envision, create an entire course just on transportation management and kind of, leveraging the tool that way. Shashank, we're kind of running out of time here, so I'm just going to go to my last question just as a way to kind of wrap up. I mean, what advice or recommendations would you give to, students or even high school students perhaps that are kind of thinking about pursuing a career in supply chain management?
Uh, well, what I would say is to start with people on the outside to, undergrad or maybe to 18, 17-year-old students graduating high school that may be considering this field. Uh, there's a perception out there that everybody in transportation and logistics drives a truck. So I just want to tell them that's not what it is. Not everybody drives a truck. Not everybody, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great job to have, and a lot of good people got their start doing that. But there's more to this field than just driving a truck. There's a lot of different opportunities out there. It's it's a really great field to be in, and I would encourage anybody out that's considering it to give it a closer. That being said, I mean, from the standpoint of what advice I would give students, I mean, that would it probably be based on what I've seen in our successful qualities in successful students or students that make the most out of the program. And I think some things stand out. First of all, the ability and the willingness to engage. Employers and companies and industry is looking to engage with students to a very high extent. That do best in our kind of program that seek out those opportunities. Seeking out those opportunities to engage, be it by getting involved in some roundtables, tips.
Shashank, your audio is cutting out, has cut out there a little bit. If you could just move the microphone. You were talking about the opportunities to engage.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so I was saying, the opportunity to engage, be it by way of roundtables or industry conferences, internships, any way that they can get involved with companies and with to try to understand their needs and their problems. I think that's something that would certainly help students get a leg up on the competition and make a successful career in this field. Another thing that doesn't get stressed enough, and I think I'd alluded to this sometime back, is the ability or the willingness to go out and learn another language. It sounds scary at first, but so many or so much of our field and so much of our business is international, and just the ability to speak, even if it's just the ability to carry out a rudimentary basic conversation, just the ability to do that, I think that would set somebody apart. So I think simple things like this are really what, in my opinion, uh, help students become successful in a field like ours.
No, excellent advice, and I completely agree with you about speaking a second language. I mean, I was fortunate enough that Spanish was my first language, so I am bilingual. But so much of this industry, as you said, is global, and it's only going to continue to get more global. And the ability to communicate in a different language, whether it's with obviously with suppliers, with customers, with trading partners, to be able to communicate in their native, language, obviously helps facilitate communication and collaboration, which are, those two buzzwords you hear a lot about in supply chain management, but they're buzzwords for a reason because they really are so important to successfully manage supply chain processes. So with that, Shashank, like I always say at the end of all my episodes, we always manage to just scratch the surface on these topics, but I want to thank you for, making time to be on the program today and sharing your experience there at Auburn University and leveraging technology and being part of MercuryGate University and leveraging TMS in the classroom. So thank you for sharing your experience.
Well, thanks for having me, Adrian, and I'd certainly like to send a shout out to the folks at MercuryGate as well. They've been incredibly helpful, and I mean, we couldn't have asked for more from them. They've been a really good support as we've built our supply chain program, and especially our tools and technologies offering in that.
Great. Yeah, great to hear. And I think that that's a great example of how, technology companies and, the education community can work closely together, to really help prepare the next generation of supply chain logistics professionals. And I think there's, we need more of that out there. Certainly I see, other software companies are beginning to do that. Some 3PLs are doing that as well. So certainly I think that there is a lot of great momentum, within the whole ecosystem of really, addressing, this need in the industry. We didn't get any questions live today, so thank all of you who are joining us live. But if you are watching this on demand and you do have a question for Shashank, you can find the episode on talkinglogistics.com, and you can post a question or a comment there, and I'm sure Shashank will be more than happy to respond via that medium. So with that, thank you very much for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.